I'd like to start by welcoming all of you to this session, which is looking at how non-profit organisations can benefit in delivering their mission with the use of pro bono operational research and data science for social good. I'll just give you a little bit of information about the programme that we've got lined up for you, and then we'll go into the welcome, where we'll talk to each of you who's in the room a little bit more about what your interests are, where you're from, and what you would like to get out of this session. So we're going to start with that welcome, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about operational research and the pro bono scheme. And Jane Parkin, one of the pro bono volunteers, will talk about a particular example of a project. And then we'll move over to the Data Science for Social Good initiative, where Jürgen Branke from Warwick Business School will introduce it and then show a video of a particular example. I'll just introduce myself. I'm chair of the Pro Bono Steering Group of the OR Society and a co-founder of it. I've been working in operational research and general management all my career, and I've also had experience as chair and trustee of a number of charities, including ones that have been in serious financial difficulty, as well as others that have been thriving. So there's I, like others in the room, bring a lot of varied experience to the party. We have Amy Hughes, who's not visible, is in the background. Amy is our, oh, there's Amy, is our pro bono OR coordinator. So she is the one who manages pro bono OR. We have Jane Parkin, who has been also one of the founding consultants in OR. We have Graham Rand, Ian Seath, Malcolm Femby, and he would wave to you, but he's completely blacked out, is Paul Randall, who's all one of, who are all involved in either running or consulting with pro bono or both. We also have, I'm delighted to say, Jürgen Branke from Warwick Business School, who is the key man on data science for social good, along with Colm Connaughton. And Jürgen is also one of the co-organisers of the conference. So those are the people from the OR side. I don't think I've missed anybody, apart from Vin, who I guess is one of the organisers of the conference and is there in the background to help. Now, what I'd really like to do now is to go around those of us who are who haven't been introduced as part of Pro Bono OR and Data Science for Social Good, because I hope that you are representing a non-profit organisation and you're interested in whether OR or data science is of any use to you and how you can get involved and how you can get access to services. So if I can just go around and invite you to say a minute or two, just saying who you are, who you're with, and what you're hoping to get out of the day. Thank you. If I start with Owen.
Hi there, my name's Owen. I'm the Insights and Analytics Lead at the Royal MenCap Society. I've been a participant, well, a receiving charity for several pro bono OR schemes. I think it's a fantastic scheme. I can't stay too long. I hoped I'd lurk in the background kind of quietly, but now I have to introduce myself. I feel awful. But it's a fantastic scheme, and anyone else from a non-profit should definitely get involved.
Well, thanks, Owen. We might call on you for a quote in the future. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dowie. Apologies, I've only put my first name. Habit of signing in, usually Zoom for work. I work for Make Positive History, which is a social enterprise linked with other charities looking at mainly BAM, but inner city social care issues, especially around disadvantaged inner city, usually children, and access to equal opportunities, essentially. So very much on the Black Lives Matters, and one thing that COVID-19 showed us is everything I've been trying to tell people. So some negative, but some positive is, the stats can actually show out the social injustices. So I'm very interested in, you know, sort of the data science angle and, you know, advice on good places to start.
Thanks very much, Michelle. And so I'm just going around my screen. Kate.
Hi, I'm from the Chinese Community Centre Birmingham. We're a very, very small charity, community centre, and we've been existing for just over 40 years, doing lots of projects which have been quite, I wouldn't say haphazard, but not particularly coordinated. And for the last year or two, we've been really thinking we need to coordinate things a lot better. We need to have, we work with all sorts of databases. We need to have one database that we can use not just to show outputs, but we can use to get feedback and evaluate and you know, improve services, etc. And one of my things that's just come into my mind is how we use, because when you talk about data, data's data, we have very small numbers compared to, say, MenCap. We're talking about several hundred people at the most, rather than thousands. So in terms of quantity and quality, well, not so much quality, actually, quantity, that would be an interesting thing. But we are looking at being much more strategic in our work, much more coordinated.
Great, thank you very much. Olivia.
Hi, my name's Olivia Horgan. I'm based in the Midlands. I'm really new to OR, and also I'm really new to kind of third sector working. So I've been working in across local authorities and CCGs in kind of commissioning roles, but I'm really looking to move into linking up with some kind of community organisations around Coventry and Warwickshire. So I'm really kind of interested to see how the two areas can work together.
Thanks, Olivia. Are you actually working with a third sector organisation at the moment?
No, I'm looking about to start an internship with one.
Okay. In that case, what you'll probably want to do is to drop out after the first half of the conversations. But thank you, and welcome, Neil.
Hi, morning everyone. Hi, I'm Neil Chong. I work for consultancy UK, and this is the first time I actually heard about this group, and I've got the invitation from one of my directors. So hopefully I can find out more about this session and see how we can make use of the data inside of an organization. So I'm pretty new in this at the moment. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Neil. What do you do at Prostate Cancer UK?
I'm the data insight analysis manager there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And finally, Keshab, welcome. Do you want to just?
Hi. You asked me. I was not expecting. I was attending here. I am in University of Hull. I am a senior lecturer in economics. So I'm interested in this OR society because there are many models that economics and operational research interact in, and we might need to work together. So I'm just keen to see what is going on. Thank you.
Okay, well, you stay for the first part of this, but this, I'm afraid, this meeting is not really aimed at you. It's aimed at helping people from the from non-profit organisations to understand how OR or data science could help them, and to work with them to see whether there's anything useful for them. But do hang around and watch the first part presentations if you're interested, and we'll see you at the end of those. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Oh, if I could find it. So thank you for all of those introductions, everybody. That's really helpful. And it is, as you can see, I'm not. It's not quite as smooth as it would be if we were face to face and organising it. But it's great to have you all with us. I'm going to start just by saying a little bit about what OR is. Everybody who's involved in OR has a different definition, but I'm going to give you a very broad one. Of using scientific approaches to improve effectiveness. So doing what you do better by using rigorous evidence-grounded methods that will take account of what they need to take account of, and as complicated or as simple as they need to be in order to make a difference. And when we're looking at organizations, that could be across the strategy, the systems, the processes, the operations, so right across the piece. And activities, decision making, design of systems. So the smaller you are, the more you are about strategy and decision making, and the larger you are, the more you have to worry also about the way your systems and processes are designed and the way you run your operations. Everybody is managing change because things are changing all the time. Setting targets, measuring performance and evaluation can go with that, and another area where operational research can be really useful. So if we look at what typical OR is, sort of operations that we might consider if you're a service charity in particular is how is demand changing, what resources do we need, where might you want to hold your inventory for disaster relief, where should you target different donors. I know that was some work that we did for Owen Bowden when he was with the different organizations a long while ago, with segmenting donors. And generally, how can we make this process more efficient, smoother, quicker, cheaper, more effective? So that's where OR might typically help on the operations side. It's been doing this in public sector and private sector for I can't count, but since just before the start of the Second World War. So 70 years, 80 years. See, I can't count. But much less in non-profit organizations. And one of the reasons that we're doing this is to try and extend into wider organizations. The typical sorts of decisions that operational research might support in the thinking of it from a third sector point of view is, do you open a new service? Do you subsidize a service? Do you tender for new services? What should your strategic plan be focusing on? And some of the larger charities will certainly have been feeling this over the last few months. It's what you do when things go so badly wrong. And OR is particularly useful. A lot of these decisions you can make yourselves. And mostly people do make them themselves, but especially where the decisions are complex, where they're messy, where there are lots of different stakeholders who've got different agendas. So where you've got funders, you've got beneficiaries, you've got the staff, you've got volunteers, all of whom think you should be doing something slightly different, where you actually do want to do different things, but they're in conflict. So, getting more for less is the classic conflict, and where there is a lot of uncertainty about what's going on, about how other people are going to be deciding, if you do this, what will they do, where you're not actually sure what's the best thing to do. So those are all areas where OR can help. Also, just general problem solving. So getting statistical analysis, strategy development. Facilitation is supporting groups of people in the organization to discuss what it is they need to do, so that there is some managed process of conversation that brings out the key issues. System development, performance measures, management information, and generally what OR is about is all around helping to do what you need to do to get the problem dealt with, to convert the mess of real life into an organized approach to deciding what you do next. So I'm not going into any great detail about what OR is, but it has a collection of methods which have been developed over the last 70 years. What we call soft methods, which focus really on the people who are involved and the context of the issues that you're looking at. And then what we call hard methods, which are the mathematical modeling, analysis, and data wrangling as well. So that you get better agreement between the parties about what you're trying to do, and you've articulated it internally. You've made the most you can of whatever data is available. there may be no data available, but even then there is information about what people guess is the state of the world, insight about how different factors influence each other, looking at the different options, predicting outcomes. And the big thing that you can do if you have mathematical modeling is having what if models. So trying things out. What if we do something? You can work things through on paper in advance. So the third sector, these are the sorts of questions that that apply to any manager, not just third sector managers. And Pro Bono OR was conceived to provide some support with this from operational researchers who are employed mostly in the public and private sector, but who wanted to do some volunteering, to volunteer their skills to third sector organisations. I've talked about OR. The Operational Research Society supports Pro Bono OR. It itself is a charity, been going for 70 years, and has a reasonable number of members, set up as a service to third sector organisations, this pro bono operational research, which we've been talking about. We've worked with some of the largest charities. We've worked with very tiny charities. I think the smallest was a one-man band storytelling organisations. We've done projects which have lasted from I would say about a day and a half is probably the shortest, if you don't count half-hour telephone consultancy, to 3 months or 6 months, or even longer. So it's a varied service. And we've already had a testimonial from Owen, which was very welcome, but with other testimonials as well from other organisations. So that was intended to be a brief introduction to operational research and to the Pro Bono OR scheme. And at this point, I'd like to hand over to Jane, who's got an example of a particular sort of operational research. So we work with people on developing strategy, on the very soft side of planning what they should do next and making their work generally more articulated, but also on the very hard-headed questions of efficiency. And Jane is going to discuss one of these more hard-headed areas as an example. Thanks very much, Jane. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you will be able to take over from me now. Thank you. I should have said, perhaps, though, we will take questions right at the end of this session and the data science session, if there's any questions. Jane?
Am I unmuted yet?
Yes, we can hear you.
That's good, right. And let's see, I am sharing a screen. And you can see a slide. All good?
Yes, perfect.
Lovely, right. Okay. One of the aspects of OR that I really like and have done ever since I discovered it years ago is that it can actually make things work better, and you can make better use of resources. And the sorts of situations that we've found it could be useful for third sector organisations is looking at the most efficient way to do things. And pretty well every charity has some paid staff, has some volunteers. How do you make the best use of them? Some charities, like for example Macmillan, have to schedule visits to clients, and that again is something we can help about doing the most efficient way of doing this. Some charities have vehicles. What's the best way of using them? A lot of charities actually have to organise collections. We did a project for one charity that had donation boxes all over the place and had to organise how to collect the donations from the boxes. A lot of charities have shops, and then they have to think about the best way to stock the shops as well as the best way to staff them. So it's all about doing more with less. If you can make your operation more efficient, then you can do more with the amount of resources you've got. So the charity I want to talk about now is Crime Stoppers. I guess you've heard of Crime Stoppers. They help police solve and prevent crime. And the idea is, if you want to report a crime, but you want to do it anonymously, you can talk to Crime Stoppers and they will pass on the information, but they won't pass on your details. And they're fairly big business. They can take information by a phone call, or you can fill in an online form for them. And so the year that we were doing the work for them, they had nearly 100,000 phone calls and forms. That's big business. And some of the results, 8,000 criminals arrested, 22 million pounds worth of illegal drugs, and 8 million's worth of stolen goods recovered. It's quite big business. So they got in touch with us, and I and a colleague went to meet with them to see what their problems were. And the major problem they were facing was that they were going to take over in their call center a whole extra area of the country, which meant that they were going to probably have a 60% increase in business to handle. But they hadn't any more funds. So they wanted to know how they could possibly take on the extra increase in business without any more funds. So we had a long discussion with them. Nice way of working with a charity. We used to meet up at the British Library in London in the coffee shop. And we would meet with two managing people, the HR manager and a performance manager, and the two of us from Pro Bono OR, and we discussed their problems. We discussed what data they had available, which, like any job that you have to do, some of the data you want is easily available and other isn't. So in the case of Crime Stoppers, they had a telephone call system, so they could get reports from that as to how many phone calls they had and when, which was great. But some of the calls were very quick to deal with, but others required writing a long report to send to the police and getting in touch with the police. And they had no information really on how long this extra process took, which made life tricky. So after we'd had the first discussions with them, we went into the business of what data they'd got. And eventually we thought what might be the best way to look at how well the system was working now and how well it could work with the extra business. And in OR, we have lots of different ways of modeling problems. But in this case, we decided to go for a model which is called simulation or what-if analysis. We tend to use simulation when there's randomness in the system. And the randomness here is you never know when the next phone call is going to come in. You might know that you generally get an awful lot of phone calls around about midnight on Saturday nights, but you wouldn't know when to expect the next call. Similarly, you just don't know how long the next call is going to take. So when you've got a situation with randomness in it, simulation modeling is rather a good idea. So I've got a very complicated looking picture here, which I'll talk you through to see the sort of information that you can get from using a simulation model. So if you look at the little box at the top, they had a target that 90% of calls should be answered within 20 seconds. And one of the first summaries that you can see from this report is that using the staff they'd got, using the shift patterns they got, their service level was 85.9%. So they weren't able to meet the target with the staff they'd got using the shift patterns they'd got. I forgot to mention Crime Stoppers is open 24/7, which also makes it a very difficult issue. So that's one problem with the current system they've got. They can't manage the target customer service level. The next bit of summary information you get from this report is staff utilisation. And if you look at the staff utilisation on handling calls, you'll see it's 50%. So that's showing them that although they've got meet the targets, they're also only using the staff for answering phone calls 50% of the time. That's not to say the staff are just sitting back and chatting and drinking coffee for the other 50% of their time. They could very well be working on other jobs, but they're only spending 50% of their time on handling the calls. If you then look at the next bit of the picture, this is how the system was working at the end of 1 week. We've done 1 week's simulation. It says at the top that it's in April. And at the end of the week, it's showing you that we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 staff on the job of answering calls. It was going quite well because the call queue had nothing in the queue at the time. And if you look very carefully at the pictures of the staff, one of them's red. So at that particular moment, when the simulation stopped, you had 8 staff there to answer calls, but only one of them was answering a call and there were no calls in the queue. So again, it makes you think there's something not right about the way the system is at the moment. You've got all these staff on duty at this moment, but there's only one answering a call. Then if you look at the staff who just deal with online forms, there's nobody on duty at the moment, and there's a queue of 36 online calls, online forms waiting to be dealt with. That's not such an issue because the target for answering the forms is only within 24 hours. So they don't bother having staff on in the middle of the night to deal with forms. And lastly, the last member of staff we've got is we've got 1 supervisor on the job. So that's showing you a summary of the staff, their utilisation and the service level. And then the bottom chart, again, it takes a lot of getting used to, but in fact, it's really, really useful. It's going through the whole week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And all the way through the hours, it's showing in the blue line what the customer service level is. That is what percentage of calls are being answered within target. And it's also showing you the green line is how well utilised the staff are. So if you look on Monday, for example, middle of the night on Monday, then most of the time the service level is fantastic. It's 100%. Not surprising really, because if you're thinking about between 4 AM and 8 AM, you're not getting an awful lot of phone calls in. And if you look at the green line, the utilisation between 4 and 8 o'clock on a Monday morning is really, really low. The utilisation is only about 20%. So you can see for that, you really need the staff you've got between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. But if you then go along and look at Saturday, this is where we've got a problem. If you look at the service level, for quite a long time on Saturday, the service level is running way below 80%, only 70% or 60%. And if you also look at the staff utilisation, the utilisation is pretty high, much higher than it is at other times. So we met again in the coffee shop at the British Museum, British Library, with the HR manager and the performance manager, and we talked them through this and said, look, you've got, these are the times when you've got too many staff on, you haven't got enough staff on, we need to think about changing what we can do to change the shift patterns. Now, of course, there are all sorts of rules about shifts. I've done quite a lot of research into this about, there's the European directive on shift patterns about how many hours you're allowed to work and how much time you have to have off and things like that. But because we worked closely with the HR manager, she knew all these rules and she could think about what changes you could make that would satisfy the staff and would satisfy all the legal requirements. So we actually had 2 sessions, and each time we talked through the different options that they considered. We tried running them very nicely with a simulation model. We could actually, they would say, shall we try changing this? We would change it straight away. We could run it straight away and say, look, it's improving Saturdays, say, that sort of thing. And we could sort it out from there. So if we look at these different alternatives we modelled, the first model was actually a suggestion from the staff themselves, the ones who were working in the call centre. They said rather than having 8-hour shifts, they would prefer to have fewer 12-hour shifts, and they came up with a suggestion of the shift patterns that they would like to do. So we looked at that, and if you look at it, you will see that they were, if we use the shifts that the staff themselves had suggested that they would like, we were way below the target for the percentage of calls answered in 20 seconds. And we'd got a very high number of abandoned calls. This is where people phoned up, hang on for a bit, and then give up in disgust. So we had quite a lot of abandoned calls in the week. So the first thing we knew was that the suggested shifts from the staff on its own wasn't going to work. So as most of the problems seemed to be Saturdays and Sundays, we started, the HR manager suggested bringing in some part-time weekend shifts, and that immediately improved things as far as the service level is concerned. We then went on with a few more amendments. We changed the times of we thought these weekend shifts were a really good idea, but we changed the times them a bit. We then looked at the full-time staff and the shift patterns they got. We extended one shift a little bit. And lastly, we changed the starting times for one of the shifts. So each time we made a change, it made an improvement in the service level, and it also reduced the abandoned calls. So at the end of 5 alternatives, all modelled very quickly, we came up with a solution that looked efficient. The HR manager and the performance manager liked it. They took it back to the staff. The staff weren't too keen. The staff came up with another suggestion, and we modelled the staff other suggestion, and again, it wasn't as good, so there was discussions with the staff, and eventually they went for the final alternative. So what happened in the end? We introduced the new shift patterns, and at the end of the first month, I got a report from the performance manager, who was really excited. The service levels had gone up, the abandoned calls had halved, the average time to answer a phone call had really been slashed. And I just love the quote that we got from the performance manager: "We're grinning like Cheshire cats, and I wanted to share the good feeling with you both. Thank you for all your efforts. I feel now it was really worth it." So that was a few years ago. And the
Jane, can I?
was that this year, yes, can't hear you.
We're running out of time, Jane.
Okay,
so if you can just wind up on that fantastic outcome.
Yes. Yes, so the outcome was that we started another project with them because they've got a lot more complicated business now. But I'll stop now and I'll hand over to Jürgen. Thanks very much. Bye then.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks. Go ahead, Jürgen.
Okay. So, yes, I will tell you a little bit about data science for social good. Can you see the slides and hear me well?
Yes, we can see them and hear you.
Perfect, thank you. Right, so I guess everyone is aware that the amount of data that is available in this world is increasing exponentially. So it's really, really quickly increasing. Just to give you a feel of that, here's an estimate on this slide that this year we will reach an amount of data equivalent to maybe 33 zettabytes. 1 zettabyte is an incredible amount of data. It corresponds to about 4 million times all the data contained in the Library of Congress. So we have huge amounts of data available because of the internet, because all the processes, everything is happening online and is recorded online. And we want to make use of this data. Businesses have been very quick to see opportunities for profit here. Data is used for credit scoring, it's used for targeting the right customers, it's used for customer retention, it's used for pricing your products, etc., etc. On the other side, charities often did not have the expertise or the means to really make use of that big data. So data science for social good aims to change that, and it helps charities and non-profit organizations to make use of their data too. A little bit of history. The Data Science for Social Good program has been set up at the University of Chicago by Raid Ghani in 2013. Raid Ghani that has been the chief scientific advisor for the Obama presidential campaign, and he's been professor at the University of Chicago. He's now switched to the Carnegie Mellon University. It's a 12-week residential summer program where we bring together talented young scientists from all over the world to work on projects over a 12-week period. And there are two main goals. One goal is to train these high caliber young scientists in skills needed to deliver data science projects. So training is one key component, but we also want them to learn hands-on by working on projects with a positive social impact. So government or non-profit organizations define the problem, tell us what they need, and then the teams of the Data Science for Social Good fellows, with a lot of support from staff, create and deliver operational open source data solutions. So we want them to really produce something in the end that is usable for our non-profit project partners. The University of Warwick got involved in this in 2019 because I think it matches very nicely the purposes and the visions of the university. Obviously, the training part matches our expertise and our capacity, our skills, as Warwick is a university. But also the university vision includes a statement that says we are trying to help transform our region, country, and world for the collective good. So that was a very good match to data science of social good. And in 2019, the University of Warwick teamed up with the Alan Turing Institute to bring data science for social good to the United Kingdom for the first time. Last year, we had 5 projects that were selected out of 50 proposals or applications. And we had 19 fellows working on these 5 projects. These 19 fellows were selected from a pool of 800 applicants from all over the world. For these 19 fellows, we provided daily training sessions. So every morning they would get some training. Every afternoon, basically, they would work on these projects with the nonprofit organizations. We would provide a lot of technical mentoring. We would have weekly public lectures, and we had a big closing event in London in the Shard with over 100 guests. So that was 2019, and to give you just an idea of what kind of projects we've been working on in 2019, there was a project with Homeless Link, trying to identify quickly the alerts that homeless links get that point to the rough sleepers most in need. And I will show you a short video on this in a minute. We worked with Ofsted to try and detect problematic foster agencies as quickly as possible. We worked with the West Midlands Combined Authority to visualize the quality of public transportation provision for disadvantaged groups in particular. We helped Cochrane to automatically classify medical publications so that they can speed up the compilation of systematic reviews. And we helped DNCP, which is the National Procurement Agency of Paraguay, to identify possible cases of corruption. In 2020, we were planning to do a very similar program, but then obviously the COVID-19 crisis changed everything. We had to move fully online. We had to scale back the program. And so this year, we worked on only 2 projects with 9 fellows. And the 2 projects were with Ofsted, trying to risk assess early years childcare providers, and with the World Bank, another project on identifying and analyzing corruption risks in public administration. The closing event of this was 140 guests, so that was one of the advantages. We were not limited by room size, just took place last week. We hope to run Data Science for Social Good again in 2021, possibly with a project with one of the charities that are attending today's event. Questions we would have to discuss is, do you have the data? Because what we cannot do in these 12 weeks is actually gather the data, so the data would have to be available. Do you have the possibility to have a real world social impact? So we don't do just statistical studies. They should lead to some positive social impact. Do you have the capacity to support the fellows? We figure that we would need about 1 day per week where you have time to speak to the fellows about your project and discuss with them possible solutions. And then obviously, is it the right complexity for a 12-week educational project? We haven't really set deadlines yet, but I anticipate that the application deadline for next year's Data Science for Social Good would be in January 2021. But the sooner you can get in touch with us and we can discuss whether your needs might be met by this program, the better, I think. And you can just contact me via email my first name, jürgen.ranke@wbs. Oh, that should be ac.uk. So sorry, please note there's an A missing, wbs.ac.uk. Right, so I want to give you a brief example of the project that we did with Homeless Link. And for that, let me stop this and share again the video. Okay.
Every night, 4,700 people are forced to sleep rough on the streets in England because they do not have access to a shelter or home to stay in. So let's say you're walking home one night and you come across someone who is rough sleeping. Our partner Homeless Link has a solution, and all it takes is your mobile phone. So Homeless Link is a charity membership organization working to end homelessness in England and Wales. One way they are working to do this is through their platform called StreetLink. StreetLink can be accessed through a mobile phone, through a website, and through a landline. And members of the public, as well as rough sleepers themselves, can create an alert about someone who is rough sleeping, with the goal being that a local service provider is able to locate that rough sleeper and provide them with any necessary assistance, such as taking them to a shelter. That location information was used to create the plot behind me, which shows where all 280,000 alerts that have been created at StreetLink originated. What would happen next is a volunteer staff member at StreetLink would then review your alert to see if there's enough information to where if they sent out a local service provider, they think they could find that rough sleeper. If it meets that criteria, they turn it into what is called a referral. And a referral is actually what is sent to the local outreach team and is used to try to find that rough sleeper. Ultimately, a person is either found or not found. So you can see how not every alert turns into a referral, and not every referral ends in that person being found. And that brings us to the problem that we worked on this summer. So of the 280,000 alerts that StreetLink has received, only 14% of those have resulted in that person being found. And part of the reason for this problem is that manual review process that StreetLink volunteers and staff members have to go through in order to assess the quality of each alert before turning it into a referral. This is especially difficult during the winter months or during a storm where StreetLink can receive over 1,000 alerts in a given day. And they don't have any way of prioritizing these alerts or knowing which one should be turned into a referral without manually digging into each one. By the time they get to a high quality alert at the bottom of the list, it might have been created days ago and that rough sleeper is no longer there. So the way that we worked on solving this problem was we worked with Homeless Link and we shadowed StreetLink volunteers so that we understood their process. And we used the information on these alerts, again including the data such as the gender, the descriptions about their appearance and location, and we built a model that would generate a prioritized list of alerts based on the likelihood that that rough sleeper would be found. This way, the highest quality alerts are at the very top of the list and can quickly be turned into referrals by the StreetLink team. We created a solution that was efficient, effective, and equitable. So when our model is used to push out the same number of referrals as StreetLink's current process, it leads to an increase in 18% in the person found rate. By having a prioritized list of alerts for StreetLink to review, high-quality alerts can more quickly be turned into referrals, keeping that information more up to date, potentially leading to more rough sleepers being found. We believe that our project will have an impact both on an individual rough sleeper level as well as the rough sleeper population as a whole. By better connecting rough sleepers to local service providers, we can minimize the amount of time that someone spends in the vulnerable position of having to sleep on the street. In addition, the data analysis we can give Homeless Link can be used in their yearly conversations with the UK government in order to impact positive policy change to reduce the problem of rough sleeping in England. Thank you very much. My name is Zoe, and this summer I got to work with Lucia, Austin, Harry, Josh, and Adolfo, and we really enjoyed our time here and are really excited to talk more about with you after. Thank you.
So that was from last year's closing presentation, one of the fellows presenting their projects. And with that, I would hand over back to Ruth, I think.
Okay, thanks very much, Jürgen, for that. And I hope you found that also very interesting. Oops, sorry. So the idea is that we will next move into workshops with the charities or third sector organisations, non-profit organisations that are represented here today. But before we do that, I just want to say a couple of words, firstly, that show some of the differences between the two schemes of data science for social good and pro bono OR. Can I just check that the sound is okay? Sound okay? Yeah, great, thank you. So there is a lot of overlap between the two. There are many OR people who are work as data scientists or who have similar skills for data scientists, and many data scientists who have similar skills to people who call themselves OR. The two schemes themselves are where the biggest difference comes. So if you did have a project and you were interested in one or the other scheme, the data science for social good, as we've just seen, is about harnessing data specifically. Depending on the number of fellows that you get and the volume of effort that goes into your scheme will be somewhere between 3 and 12 person months. But it is for a fixed time in June of any year for 3 months. What it delivers is for you, yes, but is also for the world. So they're delivering something which is open to everybody. But you are getting cutting edge specialist expertise from hand-selected students supported by deep experts in data science. Pro bono OR is much more general. It'll work with any problem, whether there is decent data or not. We will tend to start, though, with only offering a very small number of days while we get things sorted, because we're dependent on our volunteers who are taking time out from their day job or evenings and weekends, and we won't ask for too much from them to start with, but volunteers can get passionate about projects and about organizations, so if you need more, you may well be able to get more. Any time of the year, any duration, delivers to you what you've agreed, and what you're getting is people who are working, competent people. They're not at the cutting edge, but they usually have some experience. So those are the rough indication of the differences between those two schemes. I shall stop at this moment and invite any questions that anybody's got about either of the presentations. And when I say anybody, I'm not quite sure now who we've got in the room, but I would like to invite questions from the third sector organisations only, or people representing, non-profit organisations, unless anybody's got any corrections. Anybody involved in pro bono OR, data science for social good, thinks we've not said anything right. So, and I actually can't see everybody, and there aren't very many in any case. So I think it's probably okay just to unmute yourself and shout out if there's a question that you would like answered.
What would be the way of contacting the PBOR?
I'll leave a website address at the end, but perhaps Amy, you could put it in the chat, and then we can.
Yeah. I'll just pop the email in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other? Okay. Well, if you do think of anything, then do just kind of unmute and call out in the politest possible way. So we're assuming that you've joined this talk because you feel that something could be better. It might not be because there is a specific issue that you have in mind, but it might be. So one of what we will be asking you to think about is, what are the main issues that you would like to you would like to discuss when we go into the small groups. We will go out into small groups after we'll give you 5 minutes or so to top up drinks, coffees, and comfort break generally. But we will, when after the 5 minutes, you come back in small groups with each of the non-profit organisations with one or more of the OR or data science consultants, and those will go through to about 11:15, I think, and you get a 2-minute warning at the end, and then a few minutes at the end back together. So before we do that, though, Amy will set up the groups, but it seems sensible that if you already know that what you're interested in is a data science problem, even if it's not data science for social good, you can easily be moved on from one group to the other. But if you're confident it's a data science issue, then it is best for you to go into a group with Jürgen or Colm from Warwick. And if it is a more general kind of issue, then you go into a group with one of the pro bono OR people. And you might even, if you think it's a general issue, you might even want to indicate whether you think it tends to be more strategic or operational or both. And then while you're off getting your coffee and comfort, Amy will postpone those and put you into appropriate groups to mix you up. Well, I think there's just Angie left, I think, of the potential clients. So there's not really much point in me sharing the screen, is there, Angie? Because it would only have shown follow-up emails and who you can speak to. So it's nice to see you.
Yes, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it. Had a useful conversation.
We did, yes, yeah. It is always good, to kind of raise your head above the parapet, if you like, from the daily grind to actually think about, how I can work better with other people and they can support us. And, sometimes you get so engrossed in the work that you forget that there's actually help out there. And yes, it's like working smarter, not harder, and pooling resources and tapping into, the sources of support and help. So yeah, it's been useful.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Managed to pass responsibility for following this up to Malcolm and Paul. So this is the art of management. So.
Don't delegate.
Oh, so I'm going to follow up, but there's a bit of a hiatus while Angie goes to Barbados.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. And presumably you'll then have to isolate for, we don't know how long.
No, it's on the travel corridor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Today.
Today it is, yes, today it is. So
my niece's partner was stuck in Trinidad for about 9 months.
Oh wow. Well, I'm going to take my
9 months,
with
can
me.
It must have been 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to take my laptop with me just in case.
Yeah, and then nobody need know that you're in Barbados.
No, exactly.
Be there now. Well, I would like. I won't keep everybody any longer now. We'll all no doubt get together at some point. But I know Amy's got to dash off to something very soon, and I'd just like to thank everybody very much for coming, for being with us. Good to see you again, Angie. Hope it turns into something useful.
Yes.
And we'll be in touch.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Ruth, for organising.
Thank you. Bye.